What's going on, everyone? Jeremy here from The Quartering, and it is official. The Little Mermaid live-action remake is a flop. It is likely to lose Disney money. Now comes the fun part. See, I openly admit, I really have no idea how to predict box offices for Disney live-action remakes, because who the heck knows? The Lion King made like $2 billion or something like that. Aladdin made a bunch of, none of these movies look even like they look barely watchable for me. But I also am not so jaded and so self-absorbed to think that I'm the only one that watches it. That just because I don't like it doesn't mean other people won't like it. But what the interesting thing happening is the media has gone into full spin mode, blaming exactly what you knew they would, exactly what we all said they would if this movie stunk at the box office. And it turns out it stinks. It's not a good movie. People aren't talking about it a week after it came out. People are already talking. Do you see anybody talking about The Little Mermaid? No, everyone's talking about the Spider-Man movie. The Spider-Man movie completely took the wind out of the Little Mermaid sails. And you just hate to see it. We're going to get into that story after a super quick word from this video's sponsor. What the? Was that Jake Paul telling me to play an epic tower defense mobile game? Well, it looks like it was. Let's check out this video's sponsor, Rush Royale.
It's an exhilarating mobile game where you're responsible for defending your tower against waves of enemies. Defend your castle at all costs. Unlock new heroes, assemble your deck, combine different abilities, and destroy your opponents. This game is sure to keep you entertained. And great news, now the game is partnering with one of the internet's most thrilling personalities. That's right, Jake Paul. Rush Royale has added Jake Paul as a playable hero, and he brings his own unique mechanics and abilities to the game. Jake's hero character is voiced by the man himself, and he's ready to help you defend your tower against all attacks. Jake Paul has several attacks like the Super Punch, Hype and Energy Boost, and Memory Photo. Jake Paul's character is a limited time addition to Rush Royale, available only for 2 months until July 29th. Players can obtain this hero for free and keep him forever to play and level up. This marks the first collaborative hero in the game. With his unique abilities, it's sure to make it even more fun. I know people are always looking for new fun games, and I can personally attest that Rush Royale is an absolute ton of fun. There's a link in the description where you can download the game for free and start playing immediately. And also, when you use my link, you get a special Master Chess bonus with useful rewards, which can be exchanged for a legendary card. I know I'll be playing this weekend. I hope to see you in there.
Now, to talk about the box office first. The Little Mermaid declared a massive flop for Disney by box office analysts. In a new video looking back at this past weekend's box office numbers, OMB Reviews opened. The Little Mermaid dropped 58% domestically and is still making next to nothing internationally. And let's just say the film is essentially guaranteed not only to flop, but to be a massive flop for Disney. It could ultimately be one of the worst performing movies in their entire history. Well, that can't possibly be true. They've certainly they've got that Elements coming out last weekend or whatever that cost $200 million. That's going to do terrible. It's not going to do well. That I will agree with. He argues, now, of course, this is all in the fact that many people, when looking at the box office, are failing in comparisons, especially to Aladdin, to remind themselves that the ticket price back in 2019 is very different than where we are today. And also, of course, as everyone loves to hear and as always wants to get triggered by, the rate of inflation has changed as well. According to the numbers, The Little Mermaid's box office gross fell 58% in the second weekend as domestic theaters fell to just $40 million. It grossed $95.5 million in its 3-day opening weekend, including Memorial Day weekend. The total domestic box office now sits at $186.2 million. The Little Mermaid did add to its international total, with Deadline reporting it brought in $42.3 million in the second weekend. The film only brought in $68.3 million in its opening weekend internationally. The total international box office sits at $140 million. The film's global gross sits at $326.7 million. It reportedly had a production budget of $250 million, meaning the film is still in the red. As OMB notes, it does not look like it will be getting into the profit zone anytime soon. Now, usually the conventional wisdom says if the budget is 250 million, then it needs at least 500 million to break even. Or, I mean, you spend another 200 million on advertising. They always double it to include advertising. So let's say it's 500 million to break even. Also remember box office numbers. If they're reported to be 100 million, the company only gets a certain percentage of that. Now, Disney gets, I think that generally the number is like 50%. I think Disney sometimes gets a bigger percentage. But so remember that if it made 100 million in the theater, the movie really only made half that because the theater keeps half that. So, quote, so far, The Little Mermaid has only made 140 million. That means if you're looking at best case scenario, maybe 3 to 350 million won't be analyzed. You're looking at international best case 250 million. Those numbers add up. That doesn't get you to 625 million, which is about break even. So yeah, not a good look overall for The Little Mermaid going forward. And think about all the money they spent advertising this movie. All the money that they spent saying, this is going to be the best movie in history. This is, the time you have to, this is if you don't see this movie, you're a terrible person, which we're going to get to in a second. Later, OMB Review shared his breakdown on the film in the box office hauls. First, he explained, if you maybe never followed my chart before, I was able to break down years ago that most people make either 70% of their entire box office within the first 2 weeks, or if they have really strong legs, if they have really strong performing box office, they'll make half of their entire box office in the first 2 weeks. There are exceptions, but on average, this is a vast majority of films fall into that number. So if we assume that the 326 million is 70% of their entire box office, The Little Mermaid, that means will end the end result. So a very likely scenario, this movie would be at 466 million worldwide. Best case scenario, let's say it doubles its money. Best case scenario would be 650 million. That's best case. We are already seeing the legs for this movie. It is not holding to that extent. It's not doubling, and it's not going to double what is made so far. So even if it did make 650, it would be minimal profit. According to some metrics, would be a financial loss. It really depends on whether your break even is 2.5 or 3 times the budget. So even if it did make money, it would not be nearly enough to make up for any discrepancies in either direction. It would be such minimal profit that it doesn't even mean that much in the first place. It would still be a financial loss. He then shared a prediction how much it would make, globally. Look, I think that these numbers are generally, I would agree. They seem in line. But, there's no reason to expect that, like, The Little Mermaid is suddenly going to pop and be doing, like, massive numbers. There are movies that had incredible legs, like Avatar and maybe Titanic and things of that nature. But, like, you end up with a situation where this is just not that. And the film just wasn't very good. That's the end result of it. With all the protection of all the press and all the media and all this stuff, it stunk. No, you can blame China and whatever you want, like they're going to do. Black Panther made money. There are a lot of, there's a lot of movies that star black actors that are good that make money. So I want to point out, when Black Panther was making $1 billion, nobody was whining about international box office racism. But when you get Little Mermaid and it tanks, then it's racism. When the reality is, it's just not a very good movie. The Little Mermaid is getting doused in select foreign markets amid racist backlash over the casting of black actress Halle Bailey in the role of Ariel. The movie has grossed a mere $3.6 million in its first 10 days of release in China, by far the worst showing among Disney's live-action adaptations. What about Aladdin? Wasn't Will Smith in Aladdin? I mean, that movie made $1 billion. It's so ridiculous. It's like racism is only convenient for them when it's covering for one of their shortcomings. And they completely forget or stop caring about it when they just ignore it when things go good. They're suddenly not racist for Black Panther. Sources close to the movie, as well as box office analysts, say Disney knew Little Mermaid could face challenges but it's surprised by the extent of the backlash and its impact. The social media outcry over Bailey's casting has been particularly vociferous in both markets. Sources believe this has resulted in unverified audience reviews bashing the movie in South Korea. Such reviews have been making headlines. Negative audience reviews also populated social media in China. And just before the film opened in this country, the government-affiliated The Global Times ran an editorial lambasting Disney's motives. Well, I mean, there was certainly plenty of negative reviews in the United States, right? There's certainly plenty of negative reviews here in the United States. It did okay here, not that great, you know. And the thing is, like, look, Halle Bailey can sing. I don't know if she can act. Don't care. Little Mermaid's not for me. I don't need to see this movie to know that it's, you know, there are plenty of trusted reviews out there that have reviewed it as being mediocre. I'm not saying, I don't know if you could say it's objectively bad. But people, you know, people know what Disney was doing here. This is another huge win, I believe, in the battle for, you know, the culture. We know why they made Ariel, why they cast Ariel the way they did. Not because she just happened to be the best possible actress to play. I don't choose movies based on the race of the main characters. Maybe there are people out there that do. I choose whether or not they're actually good. And this movie, the fact that all these headlines, is The Little Mermaid a box office success? No, this article concludes it's a flop. The Little Mermaid's overseas underperformance blamed on Disney's forced inclusion of minorities. The Root, which is like a black culture website, can you guess why The Little Mermaid is a huge hit, but not in China? It's not a huge hit. Are you saying that this film is a huge hit? It's not. International. I mean, if it were a huge hit, it wouldn't be desperately relying on China to break even. I mean, you see, like, racism, anti-feminism, and slavery have cast a shadow over this film since its inception, and it's exhausting. Let us just have a fish movie. Well, I mean, you write for Glamour magazine. This is what you get. It's like the media is having a complete meltdown that people don't want to see this movie, but they ignore all the very popular movies of very similar quality that succeeded. But it's your fault, everyone out there. In this case, they're like, oh, well, China's bad. China did it. But China had nothing to do with all of our other very successful movies with black leads. Hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, make sure you leave a like on it. Make sure you check out the game, our video sponsor. Have some fun with it. We'll talk to you again real soon.